For over 6 centuries, one empire stood at the crossroads of continents, faiths, and civilizations. It stretched from the gates of Vienna to the deserts of Arabia, a force so dominant, so advanced, and so feared that it shaped the very borders of the modern world. Yet today, most history books offer only a fleeting glance at its true legacy. The Ottoman Empire, once the Wah's most powerful Islamic force, has been quietly pushed to the margins of Western historical narratives. But why? Why has a civilization that influenced architecture, science, governance, and global politics been systematically erased from the collective memory of the West? In this documentary, we journey deep into the rise, glory, and collapse of the Ottoman Empire, uncovering the stories, the strategy, and the deliberate silence surrounding one of history's greatest powers. In the late 13th century, amid the crumbling ruins of the Seljuk Sultanate and the fading influence of the Mongol invasions, a small frontier principality began to stir in the Anatolian heartland. Its founder, Osman I, a minor Turkish chieftain, could not have imagined that his name would one day echo across continents as the foundation of an empire that would last more than 600 years. The early Ottomans were not born into grandeur. They were warriors of the periphery, constantly at war with neighboring rival Turkish clans and Christian crusaders. But in their resilience and adaptability lay the seeds of something extraordinary. What separated Osman's tribe from countless other Turkic groups was vision, a unique fusion of Islamic identity, military discipline, and pragmatic Early Ottoman leaders, unlike many of their contemporaries, knew when to wage war and when to forge alliances. Their politics were inclusive for their time. Greeks, Armenians, Jews, and Balkan Christians often found more religious tolerance under Ottoman rule than in many parts of Christian Europe. This diversity was not just tolerated. It was systematized into the empire's administrative model through the millet system, where communities could govern themselves under their own religious laws. The Ottomans, even in their earliest phases, understood that empire was built not merely through conquest, but through cohesion. They were also masters of timing. As the Byzantine Empire weakened and fractured, the Ottomans filled the void. They didn't rush toward domination, but expanded steadily, absorbing not only territory, but culture, knowledge, and economic practices. Their military was unmatched among Muslim powers of the time. The Ghazi warrior ethos, a mixture of spiritual and physical warfare, drove early conquests and gave the Ottomans a sense of divine mission. But alongside this, spiritual zeal was a remarkable administrative innovation. The use of skilled bureaucrats, effective land grants, and a growing network of alliances meant that Ottoman expansion wasn't chaotic. It was strategic. Even as a fledgling state, the Ottoman Emirate established itself as a force to be reckoned with. By the mid-14th century, it had already crossed into Europe, establishing a stronghold in Gallipoli and opening the path to the Balkans. This European foothold would later make the Ottomans not just a regional Islamic empire, but a global force that threatened the very core of Christendom. And yet, at this stage, the West still underestimated them, viewing them as another Eastern nuisance. That misjudgment would prove fatal. The birth of the Ottoman Empire was not just the emergence of a new power, but the rebirth of Islamic governance in a world still recovering from Mongol devastation. It was both a reaction and a reinvention, and it laid the groundwork for an empire that would challenge East and West alike. This wasn't merely about land or titles. It was about identity, survival, and the dream of a renewed Islamic world order that had both sword and scripture in hand. The early Ottomans began as a tribe of fierce warriors, but over time they transformed into rulers who wielded not just the sword but the scepter of sovereignty. This transformation was rooted in their claim to Islamic legitimacy, a critical foundation for uniting diverse peoples under one banner. By declaring themselves Ghazis, holy warriors defending Islam, Ottoman leaders positioned their conquests as divinely sanctioned efforts, earning both popular support and religious authority. The establishment of the Sultanate symbolized a profound shift. The title, Sultan, meaning strength or authority, was more than a name. It was a declaration of the Ottomans' role as leaders of the Muslim Ummah, or community. This claim to leadership was further bolstered by their protection of Islam's holiest sites and their patronage of Islamic scholars and institutions. Their role as caliph, spiritual leader of Muslims, was asserted in the 16th century, linking religious authority with political power. Yet, the rise of Ottoman sovereignty was not just spiritual. It was deeply practical. The empire expanded through calculated military campaigns, strategic marriages, and savvy diplomacy. The Janissaries, an elite infantry corps made up largely of converted Christian youths, exemplified Ottoman innovation. These soldiers were trained to be fiercely loyal to the Sultan, blending military efficiency with religious devotion. Their loyalty and discipline helped the empire expand into Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. Ottoman sovereignty also reflected their sophisticated governance. The empire was divided into provinces, ruled by beys, or pashas, who administered laws, collected taxes, and maintained order. The The legal system combined Sharia with customary laws, ensuring both religious legitimacy and administrative flexibility. This dual system allowed the Ottomans to govern a multi-ethnic, multi-religious empire effectively, avoiding many of the sectarian conflicts that plagued other empires. By the 15th century, the Ottoman Empire had evolved from a band of warriors into a centralized, powerful Islamic state. Their ability to balance spiritual authority with political pragmatism was unprecedented and set them apart from contemporaries. It was this blend of faith and statecraft that would allow the Ottomans not only to conquer vast territories, but to govern them for centuries, until the forces of external pressure and internal decay began to challenge their rule. Perhaps no single event in Ottoman history captures their rise in power, like the conquest of Constantinople in 1453. For over a millennium, Constantinople had stood as the proud capital of the Byzantine Empire, a bastion of Christianity and a symbol of Eastern Roman glory. Its walls had repelled countless sieges, but Sultan Mehmed II, known as Mehmed the Conqueror, set his sights on this prize, understanding its strategic and symbolic value. The fall of Constantinople was not merely a military victory, it was a seismic shift in world history. The city's capture opened the gates for Ottoman expansion into southeastern Europe and established Istanbul as a new imperial capital. Mehmed II's use of massive cannons, sophisticated siege tactics, and relentless determination finally breached the city's legendary walls after a 53-day siege, ending the Byzantine Empire. This conquest sent shockwaves through Christian Europe. The city of God, seen as an impregnable Christian fortress, had fallen to Muslim forces. For the Ottomans, it was both a practical and spiritual triumph. Mehmed II declared himself Kaiser-i-Rum, asserting continuity from Roman imperial authority and elevating the Ottomans as rightful heirs to the legacy of empire. The conquest transformed the city into a thriving cultural, economic, and political hub. Mehmed invited artists, scholars, and traders from across the empire to repopulate and rebuild Constantinople, turning it into a cosmopolitan center, bridging east and west. The city's mosques, palaces, and institutions embodied the empire's ambition to unite diverse peoples under Islamic sovereignty. But the fall of Constantinople also intensified the conflict between the Ottomans and European powers. It marked the beginning of centuries-long struggles, military, cultural, and ideological, between East and West. The conquest was seen by many in Europe, not just as a loss of territory but as a threat to Christendom itself, fueling wars and crusades aimed at halting Ottoman expansion. In many ways, the conquest of Constantinople was the high-water mark of Ottoman power, a moment when the empire's destiny as a global force was sealed. Yet, it also marked the start of an enduring narrative that would frame the Ottomans as the other in Western histories, a narrative that sought to diminish and erase the empire's achievements in the centuries to come. Following their military triumphs, the Ottomans entered what historians often call their Golden Age, a period marked by flourishing culture, law, and administration. Under the reigns of sultans like Suleiman the Magnificent, the empire reached unprecedented heights in governance, architecture, literature, and religious tolerance. Central to this era was the codification of laws that balanced Islamic principles with practical governance. Suleiman, nicknamed the Lawgiver, reformed the legal system to address the complexities of a vast empire. He harmonized Sharia law with customary laws, ensuring justice across diverse communities while preserving the religious identity of the state. His legal reforms strengthened the empire's institutions, creating a stable framework that lasted centuries. Culturally, the empire blossomed with remarkable achievements. Ottoman architecture, exemplified by the stunning mosques designed by the architect Mimar, combined grandeur with intricate artistry, leaving a legacy still admired today. Literature and poetry flourished, with sultans themselves often acting as patrons of the arts. The empire became a melting pot where Persian, Arabic, and Turkish influences blended, producing a rich and unique cultural identity. Perhaps most striking was the empire's approach to religious diversity. The millet system institutionalized religious tolerance, allowing Jews, Christians, and other groups to govern their own affairs under their religious laws, while pledging loyalty to the sultan. This approach created a relatively peaceful coexistence in an era often marked by sectarian strife elsewhere. Trade and economy thrived as well, with Istanbul becoming a vital hub connecting Asia, Europe, and Africa. The Ottomans controlled key trade routes, facilitating cultural and economic exchange on an unprecedented scale. This prosperity supported not just the elite, but also ordinary citizens, artisans, and merchants, embedding the empire deeply into global networks. This golden age was not just a time of peace and prosperity, it was a powerful assertion that an Islamic empire could be both mighty and just, culturally rich and religiously inclusive. The achievements of this period remain a testament to the Ottoman vision of leadership, even as later centuries would bring new challenges and decline. Suleiman I, known as Suleiman the Magnificent in the West and the lawgiver in the Muslim world, remains one of the most iconic figures of Ottoman history. His nearly 46-year reign in the 16th century marked the zenith of Ottoman power, militarily, politically, and culturally. Under his leadership, the empire expanded deeper into Europe, consolidated its laws, and reached new heights in art and architecture. Suleiman's military campaigns stretched Ottoman control across the Mediterranean, North Africa, and Central Europe. His victories against the Habsburgs and Safavid Persia secured borders and opened new trade routes. But Suleiman was more than a warrior. He was a skilled administrator and a patron of culture, commissioning monumental works that symbolized the empire's grandeur. His legal reforms strengthened the empire's judicial system and balanced religious law with the needs of a diverse population. These reforms earned him the title Kanuni, and his legacy in law endures in parts of the region to this day. Suleiman's court attracted poets, scholars, and artists, creating a cultural renaissance that celebrated Ottoman identity. The Sultan's personality combined charisma, wisdom, and pragmatism. He was known for his justice and care for his subjects, earning respect even from rivals. His personal life was marked by dramatic stories. His relationship with his wife, Hurrem Sultan, for example, shaped palace, politics, and succession struggles. Suleiman's reign also embodied the tensions of an empire balancing tradition with change. While expanding militarily, the empire had to manage internal diversity, political intrigue, and economic pressures. Suleiman's success lay in his ability to navigate these challenges, while leaving a legacy of strength and culture. For many, Suleiman personifies the glory of the Ottoman Empire, a ruler whose vision and leadership made his empire a true superpower of the early modern world. His story is central to understanding how the Ottomans saw themselves and how they were perceived by others. As the Ottoman Empire expanded through the 15th and 16th centuries, European powers grew increasingly alarmed. The Ottomans' rapid conquests and control over key trade routes threatened not only political boundaries but also the religious and cultural identity of Christendom. The West's response was a mix of military resistance, diplomatic maneuvering, and cultural framing that painted the Ottomans as an existential threat. European kingdoms organized coalitions, such as the Holy League, to resist Ottoman advances. Battles like Lepanto in 1571, where a coalition of Catholic states defeated the Ottoman navy, became symbolic moments of resistance. Yet despite these setbacks, the empire's influence remained formidable for centuries. Beyond military conflicts, the West crafted a narrative that portrayed the Ottomans as the other, barbaric, despotic, and a menace to Christian Europe. This narrative served to justify continued wars and colonial ambitions. In art, literature, and political discourse, the Ottomans were often depicted as villains, reinforcing fear and prejudice. This demonization also influenced how history was recorded. Western historians, often writing from a Eurocentric perspective, downplayed Ottoman achievements and highlighted decline and corruption. This selective memory shaped public perceptions, making it easier for Western powers to legitimize efforts to contain or dismantle the empire. Yet, despite this fear and opposition, the Ottomans managed diplomatic relations with European states, engaging in treaties, trade agreements, and cultural exchanges. These interactions show a more complex relationship than simple antagonism. Europe's fear of Ottoman dominance was both a reaction to military threat and a factor in the empire's eventual marginalization in global history. This chapter reveals how political power and historical memory intertwine, shaping how civilizations are remembered or forgotten. No empire lasts forever. By the late 17th century, cracks began to appear in the Ottoman facade. Internally, the empire faced corruption, inefficient governance, and growing resistance from within its own territories. These internal challenges, combined with external pressures, accelerated a long period of decline. Corruption and the bureaucracy undermined the efficiency of the government. The once loyal Janissaries grew powerful and politically ambitious, sometimes revolting against the Sultan. This internal unrest destabilized central authority. Economic difficulties also emerged as trade routes shifted and European powers grew wealthier through new maritime routes. Rebellion was widespread in provinces where ethnic and religious groups sought autonomy. The empire's multi-ethnic nature, once a source of strength, now became a liability. Nationalist movements in the Balkans and Arab lands threatened to break the empire apart. Attempts at reform, such as the Tanzimat period in the 19th century, aimed to modernize administration, law, and military along European lines. However, these reforms were often half-hearted, met with resistance from conservative factions, and implemented unevenly. The weakening of central power created opportunities for European powers to intervene. Russia, Austria, and Britain all sought to expand their influence at the Ottoman expense, often under the guise of protecting Christian minorities. This internal decline was complex, not simply a fall, but a prolonged struggle to adapt to a changing world. It illustrates how empires can crumble not only from external conquest, but from internal decay and the challenges of modernization. As the Ottoman Empire weakened in the 19th and early 20th centuries, Western colonial powers gained momentum. Alongside military and political conquest came a powerful narrative aimed at justifying colonialism. The idea that Islamic civilization, embodied by the Ottomans, was backward, despotic, and in decline. Western historians, politicians, and writers crafted stories that minimized Ottoman achievements and exaggerated decline. This colonial narrative served multiple purposes. It justified European imperialism, legitimized intervention in Muslim lands, and shaped global perceptions of Islam and the Middle East. Textbooks, academic works, and popular media presented a skewed version of history that erased the complexity of Ottoman governance, cultural achievements, and its role as a major world power. Islamic history was often reduced to a story of stagnation and failure. This rewriting had deep consequences. It influenced how generations of Muslims saw their own history and identity, often fostering feelings of loss and inferiority. It also shaped Western policies and attitudes toward Muslim-majority countries throughout the 20th century. Understanding this colonial narrative is essential to reclaiming a balanced view of history. It reveals how power shapes knowledge and how historical erasure can be a tool of domination. The Ottoman Empire's story, therefore, is not just about an empire lost, but about the battle over memory and identity. The outbreak of World War I marked the beginning of the end for the Ottoman Empire. Choosing to ally with the Central Powers, the empire found itself engulfed in a conflict that devastated its territories and accelerated its collapse. The war drained resources, shattered armies, and opened the door for foreign occupation. The Arab Revolt, supported by the British, fractured Ottoman control over Arab lands, signaling the disintegration of the empire's core. Battles across the Middle East and the Caucasus further weakened Ottoman forces. By the war's end in 1918, the once mighty empire was reduced to a shadow of its former self. The Treaty of 1920 attempted to dismantle Ottoman territories completely, carving up lands for European mandates. This treaty was deeply resented and sparked nationalist resistance, notably led by Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, who founded modern Turkey. In 1924, the formal abolition of the Ottoman Caliphate marked the symbolic end of centuries of Islamic sovereignty. This act reverberated across the Muslim world, symbolizing not only a political loss, but a spiritual rupture. The Ottoman sultans had long been seen as caliphs, spiritual leaders of Sunni Islam, and their removal left a void in Islamic leadership. World War I, therefore, was not just a military defeat, but a profound transformation of political and religious structures in the Muslim world. The empire's dissolution reshaped borders, identities, and geopolitics. Legacies still felt today. The Ottoman Empire's legacy is complex and contested. For decades, its history was marginalized or distorted, especially in Western narratives that emphasize decline and failure. Yet, among many Muslims, the Ottoman past remains a source of pride and identity. Modern Turkey, founded on the ruins of the empire, wrestles with this heritage, balancing secular nationalism with Ottoman nostalgia. Across the Middle East and beyond, the empire's cultural, architectural, and religious influences endure in language, art, law, and traditions. Movements seeking to revive Islamic political authority sometimes invoke the Ottoman Caliphate as a symbol of lost unity and strength. This nostalgia reflects both historical memory and contemporary aspirations. Amid geopolitical challenges, however, reclaiming this legacy requires confronting both the achievements and the contradictions of Ottoman rule. It means acknowledging periods of tolerance alongside repression, cultural flourishing alongside conflict. The story of the Ottoman Empire is thus not just a history lesson, but a living dialogue about identity, power, and memory. As the Muslim world continues to navigate its place in the 21st century, the echoes of the Ottoman past remind us that history is never truly erased. It waits to be remembered, understood, and If you found this deep dive into the Ottoman Empire's history enlightening, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth documentary series exploring the hidden stories of countries and cities around the world. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Share your thoughts and questions in the comments. We love hearing from you. Together, let's uncover the past to understand our world today.